Don't you think it was your responsibility to inform the officers of your position, especially considering your high rank? I didn't blink. Is it my job to announce that I deserve basic rights, or is it their job to treat everyone like they do? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor doubled down. So you intentionally withheld your identity to test them? And that's when I cut through the air like a blade. No, I withheld it because I shouldn't need to perform authority to earn humanity. Silence, not the awkward kind, the reckoning kind. Every juror leaned in, every badge in the room shifted. And for the first time, the system couldn't hide behind its usual defense. This wasn't a trial anymore. This was exposure. And it was too late to look away. Have you ever been judged, abused by authority, discriminated against, or had your dignity and self-worth completely stripped away? Let me tell you my story, a story that somewhere in this world still happens far too often. Leave a comment with the number 9, so I know you're with me and ready to hear what I have to share. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss any of the intense moments ahead. If you are deaf or have trouble hearing, please turn on the subtitles. We created them especially for you because you matter. This is Radio from Hine, the #1 YouTube channel for justice and equality for everyone, standing strong against racism and discrimination. Wishing you a peaceful day. The first thing they noticed wasn't my face, it was my silence. Courtrooms have a way of amplifying arrogance. You can feel it, thick, invisible, clinging to the ceilings like smoke. The kind of arrogance that assumes, presumes, and mocks before a single word is spoken. I stepped in wearing a navy blue suit, tailored, crisp, sharp enough to slice the stairs. No one stood. Not the gallery, not the officers, not even the damn bailiff gave me the courtesy of acknowledgement. 2 men at the prosecution's table, badges pinned to their chests like medals earned in war, were too busy chuckling under their breath. Officer Darnell Reed leaned back, arms folded, his lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Officer Bryce Callan, the younger one, stared me down like he'd already won. I knew that look. I'd seen it too many times in too many places. The look that said, "You don't belong here. You're not one of us. You're just another loudmouth in a suit." They thought I was here to beg for mercy. They had no idea. The courtroom was mostly white. White walls, white noise, white people. Everything sterile, everything polished, everything controlled, except me. I walked with precision. My heels tapped out a rhythm on the floor that cut through the murmurs, the shifting weight of the jury settling in, the whispers from the back row. I didn't rush. I didn't shrink. I didn't flinch. I was the only black woman in the room, and they all thought I was alone. The judge hadn't entered yet, but the atmosphere already reeked of bias. You could smell it, like cheap cologne mixed with old blood and fresh lies. Somewhere along the bench, I saw a journalist scribbling something, probably another headline ready to frame me as aggressive or defensive or resisting. I took my seat beside my attorney, Jonas Bell. He gave me a quiet nod, the kind that didn't need words, the kind that said, "They're underestimating you. Good." From the corner of my eye, I saw Maya, my assistant, standing just inside the door, her expression unreadable but firm. She always knew when to stay close and when to stay invisible. On the other side of the room, Reed whispered something to Callan. They both laughed. I didn't need to hear it to know what they said. Probably something about how fast they'd wrap this up. Probably something about how I thought I was clever. Probably something about how people like me never win. They were so sure of themselves. That arrogance was going to cost them everything. Because this trial wasn't about obstruction. It wasn't about defiance. It wasn't about whatever fantasy they'd written in their report. This was about power. Who had it? Who abused it? And who was finally about to lose it? The court officer eventually announced the judge's arrival. All rise. This time, everyone stood, even Reed and Callan. Funny how they only know respect when a white robe walks in. Judge Eleanor Stokes entered with her usual solemnity. Judge Eleanor Stokes entered with her usual solemnity, thin glasses, tight lips, a face carved out of protocol. She didn't look at me, not yet. She just shuffled papers, adjusted the microphone, and motioned for everyone to sit. "We'll begin shortly," she said. The courtroom settled again, the weight of what was coming pressing down like a storm cloud about to burst. I folded my hands. I stared straight ahead. I listened to the sound of my own breath, steady and slow. And I thought, they have no idea who I really am, and I'm about to burn their little illusion to the ground. The judge's gavel echoed like a warning shot. This court is now in session. The murmurs died, the shuffle of feet stopped, and still Reed smirked, that damn smirk. He leaned into Callan again, not even pretending to hide his whisper this time. This'll be easy. Callan chuckled, his voice carrying just enough for me to hear. She's about to find out how justice really works around here. I didn't flinch. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction, but I saw it. Jonas, beside me, stiffened. His hand brushed a legal pad, fingers tight. He hated arrogance, especially the kind that hid behind a badge. The prosecutor stood, Assistant District Attorney Sloane Wexel, blonde, polished, practiced. Every movement rehearsed down to the angle of her folder. She gave a gracious nod to the jury and turned just enough to gesture toward me, like I was a prop she'd prepared. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice silky and slow. "Today you will hear about a woman who chose to interfere with a lawful police operation, who inserted herself into an ongoing investigation, who endangered officers on duty." I watched her eyes. She never looked at me. Not once. "This woman," she continued, "will claim she was concerned, that she asked questions, that she simply wanted to understand. But let me be clear. What she did wasn't concern. It was obstruction." She let the word hang. Obstruction. Like it was toxic. Like it stained. She escalated the situation. Not the officers. She ignored warnings. She provoked them. Across the room, Reed nodded in exaggerated agreement. Callan crossed his arms like a schoolyard bully, watching the principal praise him for throwing the first punch. Wexel continued, "We ask you to examine the facts, the reports, the actions, and decide whether this woman," she said it again like my name was too much trouble to remember, "acted out of genuine concern or out of entitlement." I bit my tongue. Entitlement. They always reach for that one. The coded way of saying uppity, the word they use when a black woman speaks without permission. Jonas rose when it was his turn. No theatrics, no folder waving, just a slow, steady walk to the center of the room. He turned to the jury and let the silence build before he said a word. "My client," he began, his voice gravelly and sure, "didn't pick this fight. She didn't plan to stand on a street corner and end up in handcuffs. She asked a question, and for that, she was slammed into a cruiser." He paused. Let the weight of that line settle into their skin. You'll hear a lot of words thrown around today. Interference, obstruction, escalation. But what you won't hear is accountability. You won't hear about the history these officers have with the very neighborhoods they patrol. You won't hear about the complaints that were dismissed, or the body cams that mysteriously failed, or the neighbors who were too afraid to speak up. Until now. A flicker passed through the jury. One woman blinked faster than before. A man in the back shifted in his seat, no longer bored. "Because today," Jonas said, eyes locking on Reed and Callan, "you will see exactly what happened, and it won't be filtered through their reports." He glanced toward me, just once, subtle, reassuring. "You will see who she is," he said, "and who they are." Then he walked back to our table, slow and measured. The room stayed quiet a beat longer than expected. Judge Stokes cleared her throat. "We will begin with evidentiary footage following a brief recess." The gavel struck again. I stayed seated while others stood. Reed muttered something as he brushed past me. I couldn't catch the words, but the tone was smug. Callan followed, tossing me a look that screamed, "You're already losing." Maya appeared beside me like a shadow. "Want water?" she asked softly. I shook my head. My voice would need to stay dry. As the courtroom emptied, I leaned back in my chair, exhaled once, and watched Jonas gather his papers. "This is all performative to them," I murmured. He nodded. "They think this is theater. They don't know what's coming." He glanced at me over the top of his glasses, voice low. "Let's keep it that way." I turned my head, catching a final glimpse of Reed and Callan in the hallway, laughing with Wexel like they'd already signed my verdict. They didn't know what the next hour held. They didn't know that a camera had caught every second of what they tried to bury. They didn't know their confidence was about to rot from the inside out, and they sure as hell didn't know who I really was. Let them laugh, I thought. The tape is coming. They dimmed the lights. And suddenly, the courtroom wasn't a courtroom anymore. It was a street, my street, the one where I'd lived long enough to know every crack in the pavement, every porch light, every mailbox dented by time or neglect. And there I was, projected on the big screen, paused in grainy black and white. The bailiff adjusted the projector. The jury leaned forward. Some crossed their arms, others just stared, waiting. The video began. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through trees, captured in flickers as the surveillance camera scanned the sidewalk. You could see neighbors standing around, uncertain. You could see 2 police cruisers parked with their lights off. That always said something. Quiet intimidation. And then there I was. Walking into frame, casual clothes, tote bag over my shoulder, coming back from a local food drive, I think. I'd passed Officer Reed and Callan standing on the lawn of an elderly woman's home. She lived alone, Miss Henrietta Johnson, 82 years old, high blood pressure, scared of the dark. You couldn't hear the conversation. The video had no audio, but you didn't need it. You could see my posture, open, neutral. I held out a hand as if asking a question. I stepped back when Reed leaned forward. I shook my head when Callan pointed. My palms were raised. Then it changed. Callan lunged. Reed followed close, chest puffed, crowding me. You could see the tension, the escalation that didn't come from me. You could see the moment it stopped being about law and started being about dominance. I didn't move. They grabbed me anyway. The grainy footage showed me being turned around, shoved forward. My shoulder hit the hood of the cruiser. My bag spilled. A can of soup rolled down the sidewalk. Callan snapped the cuffs on like it was sport. Inside the courtroom, no one spoke. I heard a stifled breath behind me, someone in the gallery. Jonas stood, remote in hand. Let's pause it there. The video froze. The image burned. He stepped toward the jury, calm, surgical. You've now seen the only footage we have of the arrest, he said. This is what was captured by a street-facing security camera on a neighbor's home. The officer's body cams, as you'll hear later, were conveniently inoperable. He clicked the remote, zooming in on the freeze frame. My hands cuffed behind me, my cheek pressed against the hood. Reed leaning close, lips twisted into something that did not look like protocol. Jonas's voice didn't rise. He didn't need it to. What do you see here? A woman obstructing a lawful investigation, or a woman asking a question and being punished for it? Sloane Wexler, the prosecutor, shifted in her seat. I saw her glance at Callan, then Reed. Neither looked back. Jonas let the silence stretch a few seconds longer before turning off the screen. When the lights came up, the mood had shifted. No more smirking, just sweat. I looked over at the jury. One man rubbed his temple. A younger woman tapped her pen on the notepad in front of her. Light, fast, distracted. The kind of tapping that happens when your worldview's been cracked and you're still trying to pretend it hasn't. Judge Stokes folded her hands. Mr. Bell, will you be calling your first witness? Yes, Your Honor, Jonas replied. We'll be calling Mrs. Vera Hodge. The bailiff moved toward the door. I closed my eyes for a beat. Vera was a retired school teacher, 76, lived 2 blocks from where I was arrested, walked her dog every morning and again every afternoon, just before the streetlights buzzed on. She'd seen it all. The hallway door opened. Vera stepped inside, small and graceful, holding her purse like it might try to run. Her shoes clacked lightly on the floor. A hush moved across the room like a shadow. Jonas helped her to the witness box. You understand where you are? He asked gently. I do, she said, voice soft but sure. And you're comfortable answering a few questions? I've been waiting a long time to say this, she replied. Might as well be today. A few jurors smiled. Jonas nodded. Tell us what you saw that day. And Vera did. She described me, what I was wearing, how I walked, how I stood when I spoke to the officers. Her voice was steady, unflinching. She didn't shout, Vera said, didn't push. She just asked what was happening. She knew the woman inside. We all did. Jonas tilted his head, and then they just grabbed her, like she was nothing, like it didn't matter who saw. One of them called her something. I won't repeat it, but I heard it clear. In the front row, Callan's leg bounced. Reed folded his arms, trying to look unbothered, but he kept blinking, fast. Jonas stepped back. Thank you, Mrs. Hodge. Then he turned to me just for a second and gave the slightest nod. This wasn't the end. It wasn't even the middle, but now the jury had seen something real. Not just words in a police report, not just smug smiles and courtroom protocol. They'd seen a woman slammed into a car for speaking. And they'd heard the truth. Grainy, yes, but undeniable. Let them deny it, I thought. Let them twist, spin, stammer, but they can't unsee it. And that was just the beginning. The silence after Vera Hodge's testimony wasn't the kind that settles. It hovered. Sticky, awkward, a room full of people unsure if they'd just witnessed justice or peeled back the first layer of something uglier. Reed shifted in his seat, jaw tight. Callan looked like he wanted to disappear into his uniform. ADA Sloan Wexler sat back, expression carefully neutral. But I noticed the way her eyes lingered a second too long on Vera's slight frame as the bailiff helped her down. They weren't expecting her to land a punch, but she had, and it left a bruise they couldn't cover. Judge Stokes gave a small nod. Ms. Wexler, your witness. Sloan stood with poise. Her heels barely made a sound as she walked across the room, elegant, sharp, rehearsed. The kind of woman who had mastered how to smile while setting a match to your reputation. She approached Vera like she was about to offer her tea. Mrs. Hodge, she said, her tone almost syrupy, you mentioned you were walking your dog that day, correct? Vera nodded once. Same route I walk every day. And how far would you say you were from the scene? Close enough to hear what was said, and close enough to see what was done. Sloan smiled, just a flicker. You wear glasses, don't you? For reading, Vera replied calmly. I see. But you don't wear them for walking? No. So, it's possible your vision wasn't perfectly clear when observing this incident? Vera leaned forward, her voice unwavering. My eyes were clear enough to see her being shoved into a police cruiser like she was garbage. Clear enough to hear one of them call her. She stopped, composed herself. Words I hadn't heard out loud since the 1960s, she finished. A low murmur moved through the gallery. Judge Stokes banged her gavel. Order. Sloan didn't flinch. Mrs. Hodge, do you consider yourself impartial when it comes to police officers? Vera's eyes narrowed just a hair. I believe in good officers, but I've lived long enough to know that not all of them wear that badge with integrity. It wasn't loud, but it landed. Sloan ended her questioning soon after, retreating with the quiet poise of someone who knew she hadn't won, but also hadn't lost completely. The next few minutes passed in procedural whispers, Judge Stokes noting exhibits, the jury scribbling, Jonas reviewing his notes. But all I could hear was Vera's voice echoing in my head, like she was garbage. That was the part that stuck. Not the legal terms, not the cross-examination tactics, just that. I wasn't just arrested, I was discarded. That's how they saw me that day, not as someone with a question, not even as someone they feared, just as someone who didn't matter. Jonas leaned toward me and whispered, we're ahead now, but they're not going to back down, especially not Wexler. I gave a short nod. Let them fight harder. It only makes their mask slip faster. He smiled without humor. You ever consider law? I considered surviving it. The next recess was short, just enough time for Callan to get flustered in the hallway, throwing an accusatory glance at Jonas, then muttering something to Reed like a kid denied recess. Reed said nothing, but his stare stayed locked on me, like if he glared long enough, he could reverse everything. Too late. When we returned, Judge Stokes asked if the defense would continue with additional witnesses or move to formal evidence. Jonas stood. We're ready to present supporting materials, Your Honor, including submitted body cam reports and department logs. That sentence made the room noticeably colder. Body cams. Reed's jaw clenched. Callan swallowed. Because the next piece of the puzzle wasn't about what was said, it was about what wasn't recorded and why. But we weren't there yet. For now, All the jury had was Vera, a woman who'd seen injustice more than once, who spoke softly but delivered truth like a brick to the face. And they had that video, those images burned into their memory, hands raised, palms open, wrists twisted behind my back. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to defend myself. They were doing all the damage for me. And we were just getting started. It started with a folder. Manila, slightly worn. Jonas set it on the defense table like it was nothing. But I knew better. That folder had weight, not the kind you measure in ounces, something heavier, older. Judge Stokes adjusted her glasses. Mr. Bell, you may proceed. Jonas stood, walked to the front with measured calm, and held up the folder for the court to see. For the record, he said, we're introducing Exhibit D, internal affairs documentation from the Eastbourne Police Department obtained through subpoena. That one sentence changed the temperature in the room. Sloan Wexler objected, of course. Something about relevance. Something about scope. Judge Stokes waved it off. I'll allow it. Continue. Jonas flipped it open. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, inside this folder are 22 complaints filed against officers Reed and Callan over a span of 7 years. 22. A murmur passed through the gallery. Of those, 19 were marked closed, insufficient evidence. 3 were never investigated at all, never followed up, never acknowledged. He walked closer to the jury box, voice even. They came from mothers, teachers, retired veterans, teenagers, people who, according to our system, should have been protected, not harassed. He pulled out the top sheet. Case 1142, filed by a Mr. Gerald Banks, age 70, stopped for a broken taillight, slammed to the pavement after asking why he needed to exit the vehicle, walked with a limp ever since. He pulled another. Case 1294, filed by Marissa Tate, single mother. Her 12-year-old son was pulled off his bicycle by Officer Callan during a mistaken identity stop. He cried in her arms for hours, said he thought he was going to die. Jonas paused. Reed looked down at the table. Callan stared straight ahead, but I saw it. That flicker behind his eyes, the slow crumbling of whatever armor he thought his badge gave him. Jonas turned the pages slowly, one after another, until they were stacked like bricks. This isn't a case of one bad arrest, he said. This is a pattern. This is what happens when complaints vanish into filing cabinets instead of courtrooms. He stepped back, quiet, letting the jury absorb it. Sloan Wexler rose to cross. Mr. Bell, she said, you're implying misconduct without direct connection to this arrest. These cases were reviewed by internal affairs. Were they? Jonas snapped back, faster than usual. She blinked. He held up a page with a stamp that read, no witness interview, no officer statement. Tell me, Ms. Wexler, does that look like a review? Sloan adjusted her blazer, lips pressed tight. Your Honor. Judge Stokes cut in. Counselor, the evidence speaks for itself. Jonas nodded, stepping back. No further comment. The courtroom stayed frozen for a moment, just breathing, just staring. It was Reed who broke the stillness. He leaned over to Callan and whispered something. I didn't need to hear it. The way Callan's mouth tensed told me all I needed to know. I'd seen enough broken systems to know the moment a wall started to crack. This was it. After the session adjourned for the day, I stepped outside with Jonas and Maya. The air hit colder than I expected, or maybe it was just the adrenaline wearing off. Maya handed me a small coffee. You okay? I'm fine, I said, though the word felt thin. Jonas stood beside me, flipping through his notes. We just pulled the pin, he said, and now? He looked at me, his tone sharper than usual. Now we watch how fast they run. I nodded. Because the thing about files, real ones, not rumors or whispers, is that once they're opened, you can't close them without someone seeing what was inside. They didn't just arrest me that day. They triggered a reckoning. They thought they'd be in control. They thought this would be simple. But you don't bury the truth and expect it not to rot. And today, we let the stench out. The courthouse was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means peace, but the kind that means pressure. Contained, compressed, waiting to break. I stood outside the courtroom doors, my fingers wrapped around a paper cup I hadn't sipped from in 20 minutes. The coffee had gone cold. It didn't matter. Jonas was reviewing his notes a few feet away, flipping pages with a stillness that only came from men who knew storms better than they knew silence. Maya stood at my side, unreadable as always. She checked her watch, then looked at me. "They're not ready," she said. "No," I replied, "but they think they are." Inside, I could already hear the shuffle of jurors taking their seats, Wexler's team prepping whatever damage control they thought might work, Officers Reed and Callan likely rehearsing their innocence in front of a mirror. Let them. Because once I took the stand, none of that would matter. Jonas walked up and lowered his voice. "We don't have to do this today. We can delay. You've already turned the tide." I looked him in the eye. "That's not enough." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "You're sure about this?" As sure as I was the moment they threw me against that car. He didn't try to talk me out of it again. We entered the courtroom. The energy inside had changed. I could feel it the second I stepped through the door. There were more people in the gallery today, some I didn't recognize. Some I did. Community leaders, reporters, quiet faces I'd seen in marches but never in courtrooms. They were watching, listening, waiting for something they couldn't name but knew they needed. Judge Stokes took her seat and scanned the room. "Counsel, are we prepared to call the next witness?" Jonas stood. "The defense calls Raven Matthews." It was the first time anyone said my name in open court. I stood. The room shifted. Breaths held. I walked slowly to the witness stand, not out of hesitation, but intention. Every step felt like a beat in a drum line, calm, controlled, unstoppable. The bailiff asked me to raise my right hand. I did. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." I sat down, looked straight ahead, not at Reed, not at Callan, at the jury. They were already leaning in. Jonas approached slowly, his tone steady. "Ms. Matthews, would you please tell the court a bit about your background?" I took a breath. "My name is Raven Matthews. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. My father was a minister. My mother was a public school teacher. They taught me early what justice looked like and what it didn't." I paused, let it sit. I went to college on a full scholarship, studied criminal justice and political science. After that, I joined the FBI, specializing in counterterrorism and civil rights investigations. I spent over a decade working internal oversight. 5 years ago, I transitioned to a national security policy unit. 2 years ago, I was promoted to Deputy Director of Federal Intelligence Affairs. The courtroom was completely still now. One of the jurors stopped taking notes, just stared. Jonas didn't interrupt. He waited. I continued. "And as of 4 months ago, I was confirmed by the U.S. Senate as the Director of the Department of Homeland Security." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was a rupture. Even the air felt different. Sloan Wexler froze. Reed blinked rapidly. Callan's mouth opened slightly, just enough to look stunned, but not enough to form words. Jonas turned to the jury. "So when you approached Officers Reed and Callan that day, were you just some nosy neighbor?" I met his gaze, then turned back to the jury. "No," I said clearly. "I was a federal official concerned about what looked like an unlawful raid in a vulnerable neighborhood. I was not interfering. I was observing. I was not escalating. I was documenting." Jonas nodded. "Did you ever threaten those officers?" "No." "Did you ever obstruct their investigation?" "No." "Then why do you think they reacted the way they did?" I didn't hesitate. "Because I was a black woman asking questions in a place they thought I didn't belong, and because they thought I didn't matter." That one landed. One of the jurors leaned back slowly. Another folded his arms, hard. Judge Stokes cleared her throat, her expression tight. "Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Mr. Bell, you may continue questioning after recess." The gavel struck. The room buzzed to life again. Whispers, rustling, emotion shifting like a tide under the surface. But I stayed still. I let it ripple around me. As I stepped down from the stand, I glanced at Reed. He looked at me differently now. Callan didn't look at all. Outside the courtroom, Maya was already waiting with her phone in hand. Deputy Secretary Lawson's office called. "They're watching everything." I gave a faint smile. Good, I said, because the reckoning just began. I walked back into the courtroom knowing exactly what was about to happen. The second half of testimony is different. It's not about reaction, it's about revelation. The jury already saw who I was on the sidewalk. Now they'd learn who I was in every room they'd never imagined someone like me could enter. Jonas gave me a look as I took the stand again, a quiet nod, the kind that says, now. Judge Stokes motioned. Mr. Bell, you may continue. He didn't waste a second. Ms. Matthews, I'd like you to walk the jury through your professional background, in your own words. I took a breath, not for nerves, just to slow the moment, so I could feel it fully. I was born in Charleston, I said, raised by parents who worked twice as hard to make sure I had a shot they were never given. My mother taught public school for 30 years. My father preached at a church down the road and spent his evenings running a neighborhood legal literacy program. I looked at the jury. They were locked in. My family taught me that justice was something you pursued even when it ran from you. I took that lesson to college, full ride, criminal justice and political science. I wanted to understand the system from the inside out. I could hear someone scribbling, fast. After graduation, I joined the FBI, Counterterrorism Division, transferred into civil rights oversight. That work changed me. Sloane Wexler shifted in her seat. I kept going. I investigated hate crimes, wrongful convictions, abuses by public officials. I saw how easily power bends the truth when no one's watching, so I made it my mission to always watch. Jonas stayed back, letting me own the space. He knew better than to interrupt momentum. I moved into federal security policy, wrote legislative frameworks to increase accountability in policing, helped build cross-agency protocols on community safety. Last year, I was appointed Deputy Director of Federal Intelligence Affairs. I paused there. The room was dead silent. You could hear clothing rustle if someone even breathed too hard. And earlier this year, I was confirmed by the Senate as the Director of the Department of Homeland Security. A beat, then two. Somewhere in the gallery, someone gasped. The jury sat motionless, eyes wider, hands still. Reed blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Callan's face drained so pale it looked like paper. Jonas finally stepped forward. Director Matthews, were Officers Reed and Callan aware of your position when they arrested you? No, I said calmly. They didn't ask, they didn't check, they assumed. And during the incident, did you at any point reveal who you were? I didn't need to. I asked them what they were doing. I asked if they had a warrant. I asked them if Ms. Johnson inside that home had legal representation present. They didn't answer. Did you physically interfere? No. Did you threaten them? I said, and I quote, if this is unlawful, there will be consequences. Jonas let that hang, and given your role at the time, were there? There still are, I said, voice low and firm, the moment turned. You could feel it, like a subtle gravitational shift, the kind that pulls everything out of orbit just a little, enough to make people look around and wonder what just happened. Wexler stood up fast, flustered but trying to hide it. Objection, relevance, she said. Judge Stokes didn't blink. The defendant's credentials are directly relevant to whether the officers had reasonable justification to treat her as a civilian threat. Wexler sat back down slowly. Jonas approached the stand once more. Director Matthews, he said, with your experience overseeing law enforcement on a national level, what did you see that day? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look away. I saw two men using authority as a weapon. I saw intimidation instead of protection. I saw a woman being made an example of, not because of what she did, but because of what she represented. And what was that? I leaned in slightly. A challenge. No one moved. Judge Stokes cleared her throat. We'll take a 10-minute recess before redirect. The gavel echoed through the wood like thunder muffled by formality. I stood slowly. Reed couldn't look at me. Callan stared at the table. Wexler scribbled a note, but her hands were trembling. Maya met me in the hallway. Her face didn't change, but her eyes were glassy. You just turned the entire courtroom inside out, she said softly. No, I replied. I just reminded them what power looks like when it doesn't come with a badge. And I wasn't done yet, not even close. Because the real bombshell was still ticking. 10 minutes never felt so long. In the hallway, Maya checked her phone 3 times. Jonas paced in a slow, even loop like a chess player, visualizing the final move. I stood still. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it. The shift. The jury knew now. The gallery knew. The press pool had already started typing headlines before the judge's gavel even cooled. But inside that courtroom, there were still 2 men sitting across the aisle who hadn't grasped the full weight of what had just been dropped on them. They would. Judge Stokes called us back in, her tone clipped, eyes sharper. Even she felt it. "Court is back in session," she said. "Mr. Bell, you may continue." Jonas didn't hesitate. "Your Honor, we'd like to clarify a few details from the witness's prior testimony." He turned toward me, voice steady. "Director Matthews, when you were arrested by Officers Reed and Callan, were you operating under any official capacity?" "I was off duty," I replied, "but I'm never off responsibility." "And what exactly were you doing at that location?" I met the jury's gaze. I was visiting an elderly friend of the family, Henrietta Johnson. She had recently confided to my mother that she felt harassed by police presence. That morning, I stopped by with groceries. What I walked into was something else entirely. Jonas took a step closer. "Please describe what you saw." I saw officers standing outside her home, no warrant visible, no ID shown, just tension. When I approached and asked questions, they ignored me. When I pressed further, calmly, respectfully, they escalated, fast. Callan moved first, Reed followed. "Did you at any point resist?" "No." "Did you make physical contact?" "No." "Did you announce your identity?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I wanted to see what they'd do when they thought I was just another black woman with a question." The courtroom went still again. Jonas paused, letting it breathe. "Thank you, Director. I have no further questions." Judge Stokes turned. "Ms. Wexler?" Sloan rose, walking slower than before, controlled, but you could hear the falter in her steps. "Director Matthews," she began, voice tight, "don't you think it was your responsibility to inform the officers of your position, especially considering your high rank?" I tilted my head slightly. Is it my job to announce that I deserve basic rights, or is it their job to treat everyone like they do? A ripple moved through the room. Wexler's jaw tensed. "So you intentionally withheld your identity to test them?" "No," I said. "I withheld it because I shouldn't need to perform authority to earn humanity." Someone in the gallery exhaled, loud enough to draw eyes. Judge Stokes gave a glance, but didn't scold. Not this time. Wexler tried to pivot, and yet, when asked to comply, "I wasn't asked," I cut in. "Calm, cold, I was told, then pushed, then cuffed." At no point did either officer provide legal context for the stop or justification for detainment. My groceries hit the pavement before I could finish a sentence. Wexler backed off, returning to her table. No further questions. Reed looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Callan rubbed his palms against his thighs like they were wet. Probably were. And for the first time since this all began, neither of them could smirk their way out of it. Judge Stokes spoke. "Director Matthews, you may step down." I stood, nodded once, and walked back to the defense table with each step landing heavier than the last, because now, finally, they all saw it. Not just what had happened to me, but who it had happened to. A sitting Director of Homeland Security had been cuffed like a criminal in the middle of a neighborhood street for daring to ask a question. And that meant one thing: if it could happen to me, it had already happened to hundreds who didn't have a title to scream back with. Maya leaned over, whispering as I sat. "They're shook." "Good," I said. Jonas added under his breath, "It's time we bury the obstruction narrative for good." I looked across the courtroom at Reed and Callan. Now they knew. Now they understood. The person they manhandled wasn't just a woman. I was Raven Matthews. And I'd just torn their whole defense wide open. Now, let's revisit that obstruction. The next day, the courtroom doors opened to a line that stretched down the block. People weren't just watching anymore, they were showing up. Some with signs, some with notepads, some with nothing but stories they were too scared to tell until now. Inside, the air felt denser. Like the building knew it was about to hold more than testimony, it was about to hold reckoning. Judge Stokes took her seat with the weight of yesterday still clinging to her robes. Jonas was already at the defense table, flipping through his list of witnesses. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The walls were doing all the talking now. "Your Honor," he said, "we're ready to continue." The first witness was Mr. Ellis Harper, retired janitor, South End resident. 62 years old, spine curved slightly from decades of work no one ever thanked him for. He took the stand slowly, hat clutched in both hands, until the bailiff told him he could set it down. Jonas nodded to him. "Mr. Harper, in your own words, would you describe your interaction with Officers Reed and Callan?" Ellis cleared his throat. "It was last fall. I'd just picked up my granddaughter from her school bus. We were walking home, slow. She was showing me her homework. That's when they pulled up." He paused, eyes down. "They said there was a report of suspicious activity." I asked, "What activity?" They said, "You tell us." A juror shifted. Jonas waited. "They took my ID, asked her name, asked why I was with her. She cried when they said they might have to sort this out at the station. I've never seen her look at me with fear before. Not like that." "Did they find any wrongdoing?" "No, sir. They let us go. But not before telling me, you should be more careful where you walk. Like, my street wasn't mine anymore." A hush fell. Jonas turned to Judge Stokes. "We'd like to call our next witness." Her name was Tanya McLean, early 30s, soft voice but firm gaze. She walked with confidence that only comes from surviving something no one believed. "Tell us about your experience," Jonas asked. Tanya nodded. "I lived on Jefferson Street. They used to patrol there almost every day, always looking for someone. One night, I was coming back from work, still in my uniform, scrubs. They stopped me, said I matched a description. Wouldn't tell me what description. Just told me to stay still or things get complicated." "Did they detain you?" "Threw me against the wall, said I was resisting. I wasn't. I was crying." Jonas paused. "Were either of the officers here today involved?" She didn't even blink. Both. I felt a shift behind me. Callan's lawyer whispered something with urgency. Reed sat statue still. Tanya continued. "I filed a complaint. Nothing ever came of it. They said no witnesses, no footage. Just my word. Was that the last time you saw them?" Her voice cracked, just barely. "No. They drove past me every week. Rolled the window down once. Said, 'How's your memory doing, sweetheart?' Like they were daring me to try again." Jonas didn't push further. The gallery was full now. More than full. Standing room only. And more than a few people with eyes that looked like they were watching their own past unravel in front of them. By the time Jonas called his third witness, a teenage boy named Marcus Lee, you could feel the fatigue, not from boredom, from accumulation, from truth stacking itself into something you couldn't ignore anymore. Marcus was 17, barely spoke above a whisper. He didn't need volume. His words did enough damage. "They pulled me over while I was biking to work, said I looked nervous. I was nervous. They made me get off the bike, put my hands on the hood. I didn't say anything, didn't want to get hit. My mom told me, just make it home, so I kept my mouth shut." "Did they find any cause to detain you?" "No," Marcus said, eyes on the floor, but they laughed when they left, said, "Consider this a reminder." That line hit me harder than I expected. A reminder. Not protection, not warning, control. Jonas didn't need to summarize. The courtroom could feel the pattern. This wasn't about one arrest. It was never about me. It was about everyone who looked like me. Who asked questions like I did. Who walked streets they were told weren't theirs. Who learned, early and often, how fast dignity could be mistaken for defiance. Judge Stokes called for a recess. I stepped into the hallway, and for the first time people came up to me, quietly, with nods, with tears, with silent thank yous that said, "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore." Maya touched my arm. We cracked it open. "No," I said, "we shattered it." And tomorrow, we'd bring someone to the stand who'd watched it from the inside. Someone with a badge. Someone who finally decided enough was enough. There's a particular kind of silence when a cop turns on his own. Not the silence of fear, not the hush of tension. It's heavier. More final. Like a bridge giving way under weight it pretended it could carry. That's what the courtroom felt like when Sergeant Emilio Ward stepped through the double doors. He didn't look at Reed or Callan, not once. He wore his full uniform, freshly pressed, every metal and stripe shining under the fluorescent lights. He walked like a man who knew what it cost to wear truth under a badge and was ready to pay anyway. Jonas stood. Your Honor, the defense calls Sergeant Amelia Ward of the Eastbourne Police Department. The name alone caused movement in the gallery, whispers, straightened spines, a local figure, not flashy, not famous, but respected. Even the prosecution knew it. Wexler didn't object. She knew better. Ward took the stand with the gravity of someone who'd seen too much and finally refused to look away. Jonas stepped forward. Sergeant Ward, how long have you been with the Eastbourne PD? 24 years, he said, his voice even, steady. 10 as a patrol officer, the last 14 in supervision. And during that time, have you worked directly with officers Reed and Callan? He nodded. Both. Many times. Did you ever witness behavior from them that gave you concern? Ward inhaled slowly, held it, then answered, yes. The word rang like a gunshot. Jonas didn't flinch. Please elaborate. Ward adjusted his posture. Not defensive, deliberate. I've witnessed Officer Reed use language that was racially charged, sometimes coded, sometimes not. Jonas let it sit for a moment before continuing. Did you report this behavior? I did. To whom? My superior officer, twice. I filed written complaints. Both times I was told it would be handled internally. Jonas raised a brow. And was it? Ward's voice tightened. Nothing changed. He turned slightly for the first time toward the jury. You can't fix what the system refuses to admit is broken. The room had stopped breathing. Jonas pressed on. What about Officer Callan? Ward's jaw tightened. He was newer, more performative, tried harder to seem composed, but the aggression slipped through. I once saw him slam a teenager against a squad car for not answering fast enough. Was that reported? Same outcome, Ward said, same silence. Judge Stokes leaned forward slightly. Her hands were clasped, but the tension in her shoulders told me everything. This wasn't news to her, just confirmation of what too many courts chose not to name. Jonas nodded slowly. And when you learned of Ms. Matthews' arrest, what was your reaction? Ward looked at me then. First time. I wasn't surprised she was arrested, he said. I was surprised it was her. Because if they'd do it to someone with her credentials... He let the sentence die there. He didn't need to finish it. Jonas walked back to the table. No further questions. Sloane Wexler stood, slow and cautious. Sergeant Ward, she began, voice tight, you're aware that speaking out against fellow officers could damage your career? Yes. And yet you're doing so now? Ward looked her dead in the eye. Because someone should have done it a long time ago. She hesitated. Is it possible your judgment is clouded by resentment? By political pressure? Media attention? I don't resent them, Ward replied calmly. I resent a culture that rewarded them. Sloane glanced down, then quietly said, no further questions. Judge Stokes turned to Ward. You may step down. He nodded once and walked off the stand with the same quiet dignity he entered with. Not triumphant, not proud, just done pretending. I watched Reed's face as Ward passed him. He didn't move, didn't blink. Callan looked like he wanted to vanish through the floor. And maybe now he understood something for the first time. That loyalty built on silence was already crumbling. Maya leaned toward me, whispering, he cracked it. No, I said. He broke it wide open. Because when truth comes from inside the uniform, the courtroom can't pretend it's just noise from the outside. And tomorrow, it wouldn't be a person we put on the stand. It would be the department itself, and we were bringing receipts. Some truths don't wear uniforms. They sit in inboxes. They hide in deleted folders. They get buried under technical errors and internal reviews. But nothing stays buried forever. The next morning, Jonas walked into the courtroom with a box under one arm. It wasn't large, didn't look dramatic, but it might as well have been a wrecking ball. Sloane Wexler glanced at it, blinked, then quickly looked away. She knew. The jury was already seated. Judge Stokes raised an eyebrow, then addressed Jonas directly. You are prepared to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, he said, Today we present digital and departmental records obtained under federal subpoena. He walked to the center of the courtroom and set the box gently on the table. This, he said, is what never made it into the reports. He pulled the first exhibit from the folder, a printed screenshot. Email from Officer Callan to Officer Reed, date stamped 6 weeks before my client's arrest. Subject line, neighborhood watch list. Attachment, a photo of black teenagers standing on a street corner. Caption, too comfortable. The jury collectively inhaled. Jonas continued, tone low, precise. Page 2, a forwarded meme. Officer Reed to 4 colleagues, including Callan. The image, a black woman yelling. Caption reads, every time they say I know my rights. Someone in the gallery muttered. The bailiff glanced over but didn't intervene. Jonas flipped to the next document. And then there's this one. Internal memo, handwritten notes from the precinct's complaint intake file. 9 separate civilian complaints against Reed and Callan flagged as insufficient evidence, despite multiple witness names attached. He held up the pages. In the margins, officer initials and a red ink stamp, case closed. Sloan Wexler finally stood. Objection. This is prejudicial. Overruled, Judge Stokes said immediately. Proceed, Mr. Bell. Jonas nodded once, then gestured toward the overhead screen. We also received backup server footage from Precinct Cloud Storage, he said. Clips that were missing from body cams were stored in raw server logs. They were never tagged, never reported, but they were there. The lights dimmed, the room braced. On screen, a sliver of shaky video, unlabeled but time-stamped. Officer Reed at a traffic stop, audio captured faintly. Stop talking. You people never know when to stop. Another clip, Callan in a backyard, voice off camera. We'll see how loud you are at central booking. Jonas let them play without commentary, just a string of quiet, grainy moments. By the third clip, no one was writing notes anymore. Even the jury just watched. When the lights came back on, it felt like everyone had aged 5 years. Jonas spoke again, softer now, deadly calm. This is not a story about 2 bad apples. This is about a system that let those apples rot, while it told the rest of us to stay silent and smile. He picked up a final document, thicker than the rest. And this, he said, is a complete internal log of complaints closed without interview, signed off by a single supervisor. Every single time. He turned it over. That supervisor no longer works for the department. He now serves as head of security for a private defense contractor. A few jurors exchanged stunned glances. Jonas paused. The evidence shows that what happened to my client wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He looked directly at Reed and Callan. It was a pattern. He returned to the table and rested his hand on the box. Gentle, final. Sometimes the footage cuts out. Sometimes the report disappears. Sometimes the camera fails. But the truth? It keeps recording. Judge Stokes called for recess. No one moved at first. I stood slowly, letting the silence stretch. Reed was pale. Callan had his face in his hands. Sloan Wexler stared straight ahead, like she could see the headlines already writing themselves. Maya touched my arm gently. They can't unsee it now. No, I said. And the country's watching too. We stepped into the hallway. Cameras were already flashing through the glass. I saw people pointing at the courtroom door, not at me. At the box. That box wasn't just paper, it was proof. Proof that everything we'd said, every warning, every whisper, every accusation they'd dismissed as exaggeration, was real. They mocked my race. Now the nation was mocking their defense. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, they'd realize even apologies won't save them, because truth makes terrible amends when it's forced to beg. By now, even the walls of the courtroom seemed tired of pretending. Everything had shifted. The officer's defense didn't just have holes, it had caved in on itself. One collapsed claim at a time, one file, one email, one buried complaint that clawed its way into the light. And the public? They weren't waiting for a verdict anymore. They'd already passed one. That morning, I stepped through the courthouse entrance past a growing line of reporters. Protesters held up signs. Accountability isn't an option, and how many weren't Raven Matthews? The whispers were gone. People were speaking, loudly. Inside, the courtroom was more packed than ever. Jonas leaned toward me. We've turned the tide. I didn't look away from the defense table across the aisle. We didn't turn it, I said. We showed it was never flowing in the first place. Callan sat slumped, chin in his hand. Reed looked dazed, sweat at his collar. Their lawyer whispered fast, urgent. Wexler didn't speak at all, just stared down at a file that had already lost its meaning. Judge Stokes entered, her expression unreadable. We'll proceed with closing arguments tomorrow, she said. Today the court will hear final statements from witnesses the prosecution had deferred. Sloane Wexler stood slowly. The prosecution calls no further witnesses, Your Honor. She didn't even try. Jonas rose. In that case, the defense would like to call one final figure to the stand. There was a pause, then a shift. Because Jonas didn't call a name. He simply said, Your Honor, Sergeant Reed has requested to make a personal statement. You could hear it, the entire room stiffening, like a collective breath being held, because no one knew if it was a setup or a surrender. Judge Stokes raised an eyebrow. Sergeant Reed, is this accurate? Reed stood, slowly. Yes, Your Honor. He walked to the front of the courtroom, not like a man forced to, but like one carrying something that had finally gotten too heavy. The bailiff brought him a microphone. Reed glanced at the jury, at me, then down. I've been a cop for almost 30 years, he began, and I've always thought I knew what that meant. Service, safety, structure. I've told myself those things for decades. He paused. But I see now. I didn't just wear the badge, I hid behind it. And when that happens long enough, you stop seeing the faces. You stop listening. His voice cracked, just a little. When we arrested Ms. Matthews, I didn't know who she was, but the truth is, it wouldn't have mattered. Because that day, I wasn't interested in who she was, just what she wasn't. Quiet, compliant. The jury didn't move, but I could feel the temperature drop. I could feel his words slicing through air that used to protect him. He looked at me again. I mocked you. I assumed things about you. I humiliated you. And I convinced myself it was just procedure. But it wasn't. It was bias. It was power being lazy and cruel. Someone behind me sniffled. Reed's hands trembled slightly at his sides. And to everyone watching this, especially officers still out there, if the badge makes you feel bigger than the people you're supposed to protect, you're wearing it for the wrong reason. He stepped back. The room stayed silent. And then, unexpectedly, Callan stood too. Not confident, not poised, shaking. Your Honor, he said, voice dry, I'd like to say something as well. Stokes nodded. Proceed. Callan walked forward, cleared his throat, and stared straight ahead, not at me, not at anyone. I've been following Reed's lead since I joined the force, he began. Told myself the same lies. That people who challenged us were threats. That questions were disrespect. That silence meant guilt. He swallowed hard. I told myself Raven Matthews was just another one of them. I didn't see her. I didn't care. I didn't even stop to wonder why she might be afraid. He glanced at me then, just a second, and he looked like a man walking barefoot over glass. I'm sorry, he said, not just to her, but to every person I ever made feel small just because I could. And with that, he sat back down. There was no applause. No outrage, just silence. Heavy, haunting, honest silence. Maya leaned toward me. Do you believe them? I don't have to, I whispered, because the jury's watching now, and they know when the mask falls. What you see underneath is what was always there. This wasn't forgiveness. This was exposure. And tomorrow, it wouldn't be officers speaking. It would be the law. And it was done whispering. There's a strange stillness after a man apologizes in front of the world, especially when it comes from someone who once believed they were untouchable. After Reed and Callan spoke, the courtroom didn't erupt. No clapping, no condemnation. Just breathless waiting, like everyone needed to ask the same question but didn't know who was allowed to answer it. Was it real? I sat still at the defense table watching them both, Reed with his eyes down, Callan gripping the edge of his seat like it was the only thing holding him up, and Jonas beside me, silent for once. He didn't have to say it out loud. We both knew what we were watching wasn't justice. Not yet. It was the sound of walls cracking. Judge Stokes broke the silence. This court appreciates the statements made. However, the legal process will proceed as scheduled. Closing arguments begin tomorrow morning. The gavel came down like a seal over a confession. As people filtered out of the room, some glanced at me, but not with pity, with something closer to reverence, like the ground had shifted just enough to remind them it could happen to anyone, and that this time, someone had pushed back. Outside the courtroom, the air was cooler, brighter somehow. Maya handed me a water bottle, but didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We both knew tomorrow would be a different beast entirely. Still, as we walked to the car, a reporter shouted, "Ms. Matthews, do you accept their apology?" I stopped, turned slightly. And with every camera rolling, every mic pushed forward, I said, "An apology is only worth as much as the system it's willing to dismantle." Then I got in the car and shut the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid on top of the covers in my hotel room, watching the ceiling fans spin in slow circles. The city hummed outside like it always did. Police sirens in the distance, tires over concrete, someone yelling too loud into a phone. The same city, but not the same silence. On the TV, footage played on every channel, clips from the trial, my testimony, Reed and Callan's confessions. Analysts debated whether it was strategy or sincerity. Community leaders were being interviewed. Social media had a million opinions. But for once, it didn't feel like noise. It felt like people were listening. Jonas called around 11 o'clock. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I'm ready." He paused. "Tomorrow's the last day. You sure you don't want to make one final statement?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No, the next words that matter don't come from me. They come from the jury." He understood. "We'll be there at 8. The next morning, the courthouse looked different, not physically, but spiritually. There were more people now, not just from Eastbourne. Folks drove in from 3 counties over. Some wore pins with my face on them, something I never asked for, never imagined. Others held signs that simply read, "We saw." Inside, Judge Stokes entered with the weight of history wrapped around her shoulders. "Before we begin closing arguments," she said, "the court acknowledges the public interest in this case. But I remind you, this is still a court of law. Decorum is to be maintained." Then she turned to the prosecution. Wexler stood, heels slow on the tile, posture stiff. She spoke for 15 minutes. Words like procedure, unclear identity, officers acting under pressure. No one reacted, not even the jury. She knew it was over. Jonas didn't even need notes. He walked up slowly, hands in his pockets like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "What happened to Raven Matthews is not rare," he said. "It's just rarely caught." He let that sit. "It's not about who she is. It's about how they saw her. A woman asking questions, treated like a threat. A black woman, punished for presence. And when they realized who she really was, what did they do?" He turned to Reed and Callan. They apologized, but not until they were cornered. He looked at the jury now. "This isn't about one arrest. This is about whether we accept a world where uniforms excuse humiliation, where reports disappear, where bias hides behind badges. This is about whether we finally say, enough." He walked back to the table, slow and certain. Judge Stokes nodded. "The jury will begin deliberation tomorrow morning. Court is adjourned." The gavel hit, and I sat there still as ever. Because the apology was done, now it was the jury's turn to speak. And the world would be listening. They say waiting is the hardest part. They're wrong. It's the not knowing, the in-between, the moment where truth is already out, but justice hasn't made up its mind yet. That morning, I walked into the courthouse slower than usual, not from nerves, from the weight of how far we'd come. The crowd outside was louder now, chanting, praying, standing. Not because they thought I needed protecting, but because they knew the whole city was watching itself in a mirror. Inside, Jonas was already in his seat. Maya stood by the gallery wall, arms folded, eyes sweeping. Even she looked tighter than usual. No one spoke. Even the bailiff, who usually had some dry comment about cell phones or chewing gum, just nodded grimly and took his place. The jury entered. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I could feel it in the room, tension so sharp it made the benches creak under the pressure. Judge Stokes sat down slowly, her robe like armor. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "have you reached a verdict?" The forewoman stood, middle-aged, sharp eyes, voice steady in a way that meant everything was about to change. "Yes, Your Honor." She handed the bailiff a folded slip of paper. The room watched that piece of paper like it might catch fire. The bailiff delivered it. Judge Stokes unfolded it. She didn't blink. "On the charges of false arrest, abuse of authority, and filing falsified police reports, we find the defendants, Sergeant Michael Reed and Officer Bradley Callan, guilty." No gasp, no cry, just silence. The kind that comes after a storm you didn't think would ever pass. Then, quietly, softly, from the back of the room, a single clap. Then another. Judge Stokes banged the gavel. "Order. This court is still in session." She turned to the defendants. "Given the nature of the charges and the overwhelming evidence presented, the court orders immediate suspension of both officers pending sentencing. Additional federal charges may proceed based on investigative recommendations from the Department of Homeland Security." She looked at me, not with sympathy, with something harder, respect. "Ms. Matthews, you may be dismissed." I stood, slowly. Reed was already sinking into his chair like it might shield him. Callan didn't even lift his head. Jonas reached over, touched my arm. "It's done." But I didn't feel triumph. Not yet. Because justice isn't a finish line. It's a wound that closes in layers. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted, not in riot, in release. People hugged, cried, shouted names, held each other like survivors. I walked out through the double doors into a sea of hands reaching out, some for a handshake, others just to touch my sleeve, like I was carrying something holy. A reporter shouted, "Do you have a message for the country?" I paused, looked into the camera lens, not for the media, but for everyone who ever sat in a courtroom and prayed the truth would matter. "My name is Raven Matthews," I said. I stood trial, but I wasn't the one who needed defending. The system was. I turned away before the questions could start. Later that day, I sat in Jonas's office with the blinds pulled low, no cameras, no noise, just the hum of a city recalibrating. "They're already calling it a landmark case," Jonas said. "I don't care about the headlines," I replied. "I care what happens next." He nodded. "You've got a civil suit if you want it, and if you lead it, it's not just money, it's change. We can push for oversight boards, reforms, real power redistribution." I held up a hand. "We're doing it. But not for me, for every complaint that was buried, for every case that never got this far." Outside the window, I could see the street where people still stood hours later. Some were holding candles now. Some were holding photos. Some were just holding each other. That night, I opened my inbox. Hundreds of messages, survivors, whistleblowers, mothers, sons, even officers. One email stood out. "You gave us something we haven't felt in a long time. Belief." I stared at it for a long time, then closed the laptop and let myself finally breathe. Because for the first time in a long time, we didn't just speak truth to power. We made power listen, and I knew, clear as the sky outside my window, that this was just the beginning. Because justice in one courtroom doesn't erase silence in thousands of others. But it tells them this: you are not invisible. And now the silence is afraid. I went back, not for the press, not for closure. I went because sometimes you have to walk the ground where it all began, to feel the weight of what's been broken and what's still left to rebuild. Jefferson Avenue hadn't changed much. Same crooked mailboxes, same sagging power lines, same sidewalk cracks that could twist an ankle if you weren't paying attention. But it looked different now. Not because it was, but because I was. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that used to haunt the place. Not the kind that made kids look over their shoulders or made mothers teach their sons how to lower their eyes. This quiet felt earned. A few kids rode bikes down the sidewalk, laughing. One of them had a cape made from a trash bag. He zoomed past like he had superpowers. Funny, that used to be a fantasy. Now, it looked like possibility. I stood across the street from where it happened, where I was pushed, cuffed, humiliated. The spot where Miss Henrietta's front steps met the sidewalk. The front door was open now, a breeze swaying the screen. She was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch, wrapped in a yellow shawl like sunlight had stitched it for her. When she saw me, she smiled. Didn't say anything. Just smiled. I crossed over. "Ms. Johnson," I said gently. "You came back," she whispered. "I had to." She looked me over, head to toe, like she was making sure I was still in one piece. "You stood up," she said. "You made them see." "I tried," I said. "I don't know if it's enough." She reached out, touched my hand. "It's more than most ever get to do, and you didn't just do it for you." Behind her, the screen door opened. Her niece, maybe mid-30s, stepped out, holding a tray with 2 glasses of sweet tea, offered me one without a word. I took it. And for a few minutes, we sat in the quiet. No questions, no cameras, no noise. Just stillness and maybe peace. On the way back to the car, I passed by the curb where my tote bag had spilled during the arrest. Someone had painted over the sidewalk crack in soft blue with small block letters. "You are seen." Later that week, we filed the civil suit, not for revenge, but because systems don't fix themselves, and I wasn't about to let the verdict be the last thing they heard from me. We demanded restitution. We demanded oversight reform. We demanded community-driven review boards, mandatory body cam audits, and public access to complaint logs. And we didn't just demand them in Eastbourne, we demanded them nationwide. Because this case wasn't rare, just visible. And visibility is not the same thing as justice. A month later, they held a ceremony on the courthouse steps, not for me, for the people. Community organizers, activists, youth leaders, people who had fought for change long before I ever walked into that courtroom. I was asked to speak. I kept it short. "I didn't walk into that courtroom to save a city," I said. "I walked in to reclaim my dignity. The rest, that belongs to all of you." There were cheers, applause, but it wasn't about me. It was about what they were building now, with truth, with grit, with eyes wide open. That night, I walked Jefferson Avenue again. Streetlights buzzed overhead. A mural had gone up on the wall next to the corner store, bright reds and golds. My face wasn't on it. Thank God. Instead, it showed a black child with their hands raised, not in surrender, but in power. In the corner of the mural, someone had written in permanent marker, "The silence used to live here." I stopped, read it again, and smiled. Because now they know. Now the city knows. The system can bleed, and we're not done yet. I don't know about you, but this story hit somewhere deeper than anger. It hit where memory lives. Where fear wears a familiar face, where silence isn't peaceful, it's suffocating. Raven Matthews didn't just walk into that courtroom to defend herself. She walked in to hold up a mirror. Not just to the officers, not just to the jury, but to all of us. Because how many times has someone like Raven been cuffed, questioned, humiliated, and never had a camera? Never had a courtroom? Never had the chance to say, "I matter"? Her story reminds us, justice isn't about titles. It's about truth that refuses to be silenced. It's about calling out the systems that hide behind procedure. It's about what happens when the most dangerous thing in the room is your voice. This wasn't just a victory, it was a warning to every institution that thinks it's untouchable. To every badge that thinks it can rewrite the truth, the system can bleed, and now it's on notice. This story is a dramatized retelling, created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to attack any individual, organization, or institution. Its aim is to spark conversation, reflection, and awareness about racial injustice and the power of accountability. If this story moved you, don't stay silent. Leave a comment. What moment hit you the hardest? Hit like if you believe voices like Raven's matter. Share this video with someone who needs to see what courage really looks like. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Because the truth has a voice. And now, the silence is afraid.